Allison Smith, and I'll be the moderator this evening. I want to thank you all for coming. I think we all came here this evening for probably slightly different reasons, but as parents, I think we share the sense that there's nothing probably more gratifying than watching your kids thrive, and there's nothing more heartbreaking than watching your kids struggle. So I think tonight we have the opportunity to explore the breadth of those successes and struggles, focusing on the transition from middle school into high school. So again, welcome to the Teens in Transition program. Before we begin, I want to make a special welcome to the Cutler family, founders of Rebecca's Dream. In the back row, we're honored to have Gail and Norm Cutler, and we also have Brett Cutler here from the family to say a few words on behalf of Rebecca's Dream. Would you like to welcome us? Thank you, Brett.
Thanks, Allison. Thanks everybody for coming out and braving the elements. It was sunny maybe, it was raining when I came in, and it'll probably be snowing when we leave. So this is the first of what we hope is going to be a national annual Teens in Transitions event. We're doing it here in Highland Park. This is our home turf. We are from here, so hopefully it will be well received by you. We'll get good feedback, and we'll use that to tailor the new program as we roll it out on a much larger footprint. Tonight's going to be a little interactive, so I wanted to start off with seeing a show of hands of how many of you have had any interaction with Rebecca's Dream prior to tonight. How many of you knew Rebecca's Dream coming in? Great, cool. No, it's okay. You can with friends, it's cool. And how many of you are here because of a Facebook post or something you saw on social media? Excellent. How many of you are here because you read it on a school website or got a backpack stuffer or something like that? Awesome. Who's here for some other reason that they found out about? Throw it out. Yell what it is, just so we know. Excellent.
It was in some paper.
Fantastic. PR at its best. Anybody else?
My son said I gotta come here.
Really? That's the best reason of all. Cool. Thank you for sharing that. As you know, my name is Brett Cutler. I grew up in Highland Park. I'm a giant class of '87. My wife Susan and I, she's in the back, we came back here to raise our family in Highland Park. We have a sophomore at Highland Park. We have a 8th grader at Edgewood, and we've got a 5th grader at Red Oak. So this year we have coming up a lot of transition into 2 new schools. And I also want to say thank you and introduce my parents, Norm and Gail. You got to stand up, you got to wave. All the way in the back. It is because of them that Rebecca's Dream is a thing. It is their energy and commitment and dedication to the organization that it actually moves forward every day and does such great work. So thank you both on behalf of everybody here and everybody whose life you've touched. The mission of Rebecca's Dream is to promote awareness and compassionate understanding of depression and bipolar disorder as real diseases. We established Rebecca's Dream about 9 years ago to celebrate the life of my sister Rebecca, who lost her battle with bipolar disease when she was 30. Since our founding, we've raised over $1 million that's gone to support our mission and to help countless people who suffer from depression and bipolar. We've helped their families, we've helped their friends, and we've helped the public in general. We're making great strides at erasing the stigma surrounding mental disease, and we've provided grants to organizations that provide programming in the community that support our mission. We've provided scholarships for people to attend training sessions to become peer support group leaders. We've developed programs just like this one and this one to reach as wide an audience as possible, and we'll continue this work and to continue to reach out with new programming that support our mission. I think talking to you tonight, there's a couple things. First of all, it's kind of cool for me because all the Rebecca's Dream events, I usually back cleanup. I'm the guy that talks at the end and says, don't forget to tip your waiters, coffee's on the table, pay for your auction items, all that stuff. But tonight I actually get to open up, so that's kind of cool. It's a new thing for me. One of the most interesting things in doing this work and touching people's lives and being in the community that I found is that almost everybody has a story. Everybody's connected in some way or another to mental disease or something similar to that that's impacted them. but nobody knows about it. Nobody shares, nobody says anything. And when I open up and talk about our story and how we started Rebecca's Dream and about my sister, all of a sudden it just comes pouring in. And my parents can talk for hours and hours and hours about the people that reach out to them every day, every week, all the time. They're getting calls, they're getting emails about exactly that, which is an amazing thing that really shows how we as a society treat mental illness and bipolar disorder and depression and the stigma around it. And that is exactly what we're working to combat every day. Life, as you know, doesn't come with an instruction manual. It would be really cool if it did. And as parents, I'm assuming everybody here is a parent, everybody have a kid, right, like going into high school, in high school, and junior high? Yeah, cool. See, we're totally interactive now. Everybody text me the answer. Okay. We're going to tweet in a couple minutes.
Oh, there was a program
Mom,
at the,
tweeting.
there was a program at the high school today about prom, and the kids had a tweet going through the entire audience the entire time. Kids were tweeting, like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of
All right, so keep your phones in your purses and pockets.
So we have to outdo them.
Cool. How do they let phones at high school?
It's not my fault.
Yeah. As parents, we want to do everything we can to make sure that our children grow up happy and healthy. When they feel sick, we can take them to the doctor. The doctor can run tests, they can do blood tests, they can take x-rays, MRIs. We are really good as a society at healing the physical ailments of our people. We're not really good at diagnosing and treating psychological ailments, especially in children, and most especially in adolescence, with all the hormones raging and all of the shtick and all of the pressure and everything, especially in that age group. We have a long way to go in that area. My sister Rebecca wasn't correctly diagnosed until her early 20s. And up until then, it was just really easy for us not easy, it was the norm for us as a family to make excuses, and we always had some way to explain her behavior and all of that, but nobody really had any idea of the personal suffering and the daily battle that was going on, the effort that she needed to put in just to get out of bed in the morning and to go through her day. And that sort of all culminates in why we're here tonight. Given the huge transition that our kids are going through or about to go through at this age, we wanted to put this event together as a prototype for providing the understanding that we all need to know and that we wish we already had. Teens and transitions, what's normal, what is not? A guide for parents. Very appropriate title. We've assembled this great panel of experts in the field of teenagers and transitioning into bigger responsibility and inevitably the road into adulthood. Very excited to see where it goes tonight. Thank you to all of our speakers for your participation. I appreciate you all coming out. We certainly have not paid them top dollar by any stretch, so thank you for being here. We haven't paid them any dollars, so give them an extra applause at the end. And if you wanted, this is, again, a shameless plug, to learn more about Rebecca's Dream or to donate, go to rebeccasdream.org. There's a really awesome website. I know a lot about websites. This website rocks. It's got tons of information, lots and lots of stuff on there, lots of extra links. It's very rich. It's awesome. I also want to take a second to thank Michelle Holloman and Kathleen Isles. Where are you? The back. Thank you, thank you. Without them, tonight would not have been possible by any stretch of the imagination. So thank you both for putting this together. And now I'll turn it back to Allison and we'll get going. Thank you.
Thank you, Brett. Let me reiterate our thanks to Rebecca's Dream for making tonight's program possible, and really a special thanks to the Cutler family for turning your loss into an opportunity for all of us. We really appreciate it. I want to take care of just a few housekeeping items before diving into our panel. Hopefully you signed in at the front desk. If not, please do so on the way out. We want to make sure you're on our mailing list for future programs. You should have received a program with bios, the agenda, and some great resources on the back, as well as a one-page handout about growth and development. If not, we have extras. If you want to write questions on 3x5 cards, we have those available. We will have an open Q&A and conversation once the panelists are done speaking, and we would love to have that be a free-flowing conversation, but if you feel more comfortable writing your questions and handing them in, we're happy to handle it that way as well, whichever your preference. We're happy to do it that way. So as far as speaker introductions, there are bios in your program that I won't spend time going over. We have a fabulous group of experts. Pat Cannon and Sandy Gilbert, to my immediate left, are both former high school counselors in Highland Park and Deerfield schools respectively, and are now independent college consultants. Next we have Marcy Jacobs, a licensed clinical social worker who practices also as an educational consultant in this community. And last but not least, Dr. Jody Chase, who is an adolescent psychiatrist practicing on the North Shore. I'll do the math for you if you didn't do it from the bios already, but we have over 100 years of experience sitting in front of us, and we have less than an hour and a half to share it. So without further ado, I want to dive in. Together, this group of panelists is going to paint a picture that both describes the external environment our teens face in terms of the high school environment, the academic and social opportunities and challenges of this time in their lives. Then we'll also describe some of the internal, both physical and emotional changes that are normal and some challenges that teens might face. In that description, both as they said, they'll sketch both typical challenges and some occasional pitfalls. We'll also discuss resources for success and also for assistance and support. So I think it's a great opportunity to scratch the surface of a large and complex topic, and hopefully tonight is the beginning of many more conversations like this. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Pat and Sandy to get us started. Thank you.
Okay. Turn this on. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me now? Okay. First, let me just say that I no longer work at Highland Park High School. I retired last June after 33 years in the counseling department. The last 10 years as the counseling chair. And so perhaps some things have changed, but I doubt it. I think it's a pretty stable, wonderful place that you are sending your children to. It is a school of excellence and with a very caring faculty and a very attentive faculty. And even though you might find that there's an occasional day that isn't, wonderful, that's true about life, and we all learn to roll with those punches. So I'm going to talk about some of the things about the transition into high school that are very kind of nuts and boltsy, and then give you a few other little tidbits. Sandy and I will talk for a few minutes about some of the high school kinds of things that will be coming up. I want to start by reading you something, because I think if I just try to tell you, I might forget something, but this is, I think, what the underlying theme is that we want to share with you tonight. High school is a time for students to experience an increase in freedom along with an increase in responsibility. As a parent, letting go is one of the hardest and most important things that you will do, because at the end, we all want our children to be happy, healthy, independent, well-functioning adults. So 4 years from now, instead of sitting here and thinking about what's going to happen next year in high school, you'll be thinking about what's going to happen when they leave your house the following August. That's a quick 4 years, and we have a lot of work to do within those 4 years. So let me begin by talking about just what's going to happen at the very beginning of high school. And the orientation to high school is well thought out, and there's a lot of different programs and a lot of different things that are going to happen to make sure that your sons and daughters are comfortable and know what to do and where to go if they have a question, and how to proceed if things happen, which they will. The first thing that'll happen is you will find by going onto the website for the district or for the high school that there's a lot of information there. It can be very overwhelming. But you'll find information about the book sale and how the kids get their lockers and some of those basic kinds of things that happen just a couple of days before high school starts. It's a very quick go into school, get your books. Now I guess they're going to have Chromebooks. That'll be something new. So that day will be a quick in and out of the building, and it's exciting for everybody to see one another when they go back. But the real work begins on the first day of school, and for freshmen, it is a freshman-only day. So the upperclassmen are not there. So there's nobody that's gonna step anyone into a locker or, point them in the wrong direction on that first day. I've never seen a freshman stuffed into a locker, by the way. But on that very first day for freshmen only, there's a program called Link Crew. And the Link Crew program is really a group of high school juniors and seniors that have been trained to orient the freshmen to high school. And then those kids will stay with your kids throughout the whole first school year. And they meet on a once-a-week basis through the PE classes. But that very first day, the Link Crew will meet, and it will be a group of about 12 or 15 students and 1 or 2 group leaders, and they will take them through a full orientation to the high school, which of course nobody remembers after the first day because there's too much going on. And then in the afternoon, the kids walk a very quick schedule and meet all of their teachers. So it's one of those 10 minutes in and out. Lunch is served. It's a really nice way for the kids to kind of feel like, okay, this is my school now. I can own this. This is my place. So really that very first opening for kids is very gentle. At the same time, you will also find out that your child will be assigned to a counselor. And of course, counselors are dear to my heart because I was one and Sandy was one. And your child will have a counselor through the whole 4 years. And that might be the only consistent person that goes with your child through the whole 4 years of high school. So it is kind of your job to get to know your counselor. When people say to me, I don't know my child's counselor's name, I'm always just a little bit offended. But because you should know your counselor's name, because you will be spending, I'm sure, some time with him or her through the whole 4 years. But ultimately, it's your child's responsibility to develop a relationship with the counselor, and that will happen at the beginning through the English classes. So that students are assigned to their counselor through the English class, and the English teacher and the counselor will team up throughout the year to provide support to students. Not that the counselor is in the English class every day, they're not. But the counselor will be spending time with the students in the English class to make sure that they're getting off on the right foot. Pass this on to Sandy.
Okay. We're going to go back and forth a little bit. I too retired from Highland Park High School. I've also worked other places, as you can see, but I haven't done a very good job of retiring because I didn't get it. Right now, besides doing other things, right now I'm back at the high school and I'm covering another counselor's maternity leave. So I'm there, I was there for the program today, and just a correction, they weren't tweeting, it was actually an interactive quiz where they were answering the quiz and well, besides that, and showing, they weren't supposed to, anyhow. So I wanted to just double check with everyone to make sure and not assume. Is there anyone whose child is going to matriculate to a different high school other than Highland Park? Okay, I forgot which school, I know it's not. Deerfield, okay, close enough. All right, because I wanted to talk, there are some things specific that we're going to talk about Highland Park. As you know, just like in grade school, I think that's one of the biggest transitions where you've got one teacher who knows your kid, and then you go to the middle school and they have a different teacher for every class. We're going the next step to even more people. So there are similarities in that they'll have a different teacher for every class. There are also a slew, there are over 160 faculty at Highland Park and Deerfield High Schools. So they have their individual teachers, they have their counselor, as Pat said, that for the most part stays the same counselor, we hope, for 4 years. The structure, I want to explain a little bit about the structure and the hierarchy so that you know if you need to problem solve, what's the best way to do that, and if you're stuck, who you call, besides the Ghostbusters, which the counselors basically are. So what you do is you have a department chair, like Pat was in charge of the counseling department. There's a department chair in charge of English, and pretty much every department, sometimes the fine and applied arts is one person, sometimes it's two, depending on that. The PE has a department chair, but then the athletic director is separate. And that athletic director is just for all the IHSA sports that are at the school, and the department chair for PE is for the PE classes. We have 2 assistant principals who have different roles, but they each oversee departments. So it's kind of like a hierarchy. You've got the teacher, and then you've got the department chair, and then you've got the assistant principals. And the principal doesn't act like a grade school principal in that they really don't get involved in the day-to-day operations, although We've served under different principals. They're visible depending on other things. They really are in charge of the staff for the most part, and communication in a broader way. The deans are the ones that get the job of doing the discipline and the attendance. A very tough job. And then there's also a lot of other people. There's security people in there, hired security people who are very close with the kids. I'd say overall, I worked at Highland Park for 15 years. I've worked in about 4 or 5 other high schools at least. The level of respect, adult to student, student to adult, overall is just fabulous. And the kids are great. And because they act respectful, they are respected in return. And I'd say it's rare that they're not. So that's kind of, they're trusted to be respectful and they're treated the same. So let's say the biggest question we get, and the counselor's a good line of defense of that, is I'm not quite sure where to go with this. So those are good and appropriate questions to ask the counselor for your child. But the first line of defense is always the teacher. If you have a question, you always go to the teacher first. And it's a very real thing, and that's okay to ask the teacher what's going on, whether through an email or a phone call if you can. Emails are a little easier because they're in class all day. If for some reason you talk to the teacher and there's questions, issues, you're still not satisfied, the next person would be either, if you wanted to go to the department chair, a lot of times we as counselors will get phone calls help guiding you through this, like what's the best way, because we're in the school, we know the people, they know what's the best way to do things. You don't go to the principal right away. You just don't do that. Even the assistant principal, you've got to go up the ladder, because the minute, if you call the department chair right away, they'll say, have you talked to the teacher? And that's the same thing the counselor's going to ask you too, so it always has to be that first. Now, how do you know how your kid's doing? Well, I think the middle schools have this now too, and the high school just started maybe, 5-6 years ago, and we have a technological tool that we use called Infinite Campus. Other schools have different programs, Power School and all that. And you can go on for the most part and see how your child's doing. That's how you get your grade reports now and all of that. You don't necessarily get an everyday report though, especially in a class like English where they're grading 100 essays versus a math it might be a lot easier for them to put in an assignment every day. So you're able to see that. There's also a fabulous tool called Naviance. And Naviance is a tool that's used for all sorts of things. I've just worked with the counselor I'm there for her freshman on career exploration and to do an interest inventory, and we take that all the way through registration, which we'll talk about in a little while, and also college searches, where you can compare and see where kids got in at schools who are from Highland Park. So it's apples to apples, no names. It's a basic look, it's not absolute. But there's other school resources that kids can use, and there are teacher aides. Besides the counselor that your student will have for 4 years, there are 2 college counselors. And at Deerfield, they have 1.5 college counselors. And they see them, they put on wonderful programs starting sophomore year. They're all on the website, a little more intensely junior year and senior year. And the students get a college counselor junior year, spring of junior year. But they also work in tandem, as we were talking about earlier, with their generalist counselor who knows them very well, and there's a lot of communication between them. So it's impossible, I know counselors who work in schools where they have to do everything. It's impossible to be able to visit and get out and see colleges, and it's one thing Pat and I do now, that it's a luxury for us to be able to do that and not have to take care of 300 kids in the process that's on our caseload. So we work together. Also, if you're a student struggling, there is free help in the Learning Center that offers tutoring from teachers and or upperclassmen every period of the day. There's a homework club after school, and they even bring food in, because if you feed them, they will come, which is my favorite line. If a student needs more structure, through a team process, they can be assigned instead of a study hall that freshmen get in particular to what's called guided study, where they would get assisted by a volunteer teacher who's using their free period to help students with, to learn how to manage their time and their assignments and to become a little more self-sufficient in that area, which we will talk more about later as well. Pat also was the original person who started our drop-in center. And Deerfield does theirs a little different, but this is where our social emotional groups take place, and students can, it's always staffed with anything from social worker, counselor, interns, psychologists, to help students who are experiencing some kind of stress. There are some frequent flyers up there, so we stress to those kids it's supposed to be during a free period barring an emergency, but that is where kids go when they're struggling. So we're very lucky to have that. I mean, I see kids all over the place in AB, the library. We do have psychologists and social workers, so there's a slew of people, but sometimes it's hard as a parent to know how do I access them and who do I go to. So your person is really your child's counselor.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about advocacy. So again, we want to think about the 4 years of high school is that time for students to learn how to become good self-advocates. And as a parent, I know it's easy to, or easier sometimes for you, to jump in and fix something. And so I'll give you an example. In the counseling office, when I would often walk out in the hallway and I would see somebody on their cell phone calling mom and telling them about the D they just got on a test in the class that they just walked out of because they told the teacher they had to go to the bathroom. So what happens a lot of times is kids don't know how to handle their emotions and need some place to put it. So I want you to think back to when your child was a baby and was crying in the crib, that you didn't always go running to the crib. You wanted your child to learn how to self-soothe. And so sometimes that's a good little memory to keep in the back of your mind, because if you want your child to become a good self-advocate, then you also have to be a parent who is a good self-advocate and say to your child, if you're having a bad time at school, I mean, if it's a crisis, it's one thing, but if you're having a rough time at school, put it on the back burner and we'll talk about it when you get home at night. That gives them an opportunity to calm themselves down, to realize it's not the end of the world because they got a D on their math test, and that they can pull themselves back together and get through the day, and really they're going to be just fine. And then the next time they have a disappointment in school, they'll hopefully choose to handle it a little bit better. So by the time they graduate from high school, when the bumps in the road hit, instead of wanting to call to say to mom or dad, can you fix this for me, they'll learn how to fix it themselves. That's really ultimately what you would like for your child to do during the course of the 4 years of high school. So start building that right from the beginning. And also know that in high school, we treat freshmen very differently than we treat seniors. Teachers are more attentive to freshmen. They're more structured with freshmen. They give them more support and more scaffolding within the classroom and outside of the classroom. And then by the time the kids are seniors, some of that scaffolding has fallen away. Some of those supports are no longer in place. The teacher isn't always doing for the kids like they might be doing for the kids when they're freshmen. So even from that developmental perspective, the teachers are also going to be very aware of the differences in the ages, but high school is high school. They're going to walk into high school, they're going to have a big change in front of them, and they need to be ready for that, and you need to be ready for that as well. So expect there to be some changes. Lots of social changes as well as academic changes. I see a very broad range of normal. So what might feel not normal to you, from my perspective, after working with thousands of kids, very normal, it's very typical. If you're not sure about something, call the counselor. The counselor will help you understand if something that your child is going through falls into that realm of normalcy, or maybe they need some attention in a different way. Also know that your kids are going to come into the high school, and now they're in a bigger pond with more fish, and their friend groups may very well change. In fact, they probably should change, or at least they should grow and develop through the time in high school. So don't be alarmed if you start to see that some of those, especially girls are a little bit more emotional with the way they handle that. Here comes a bottle of water. That's all right. But girls can sometimes get more emotionally wrapped up with things that are going on, and the boys sometimes retreat and are a little bit quieter about that. Again, some of that's very normal and typical, and sometimes you want to step in and fix it if your child is hurting. But you want to be supportive of your child, but also know that much of this is very developmental. And then the last, just a couple of words of wisdom for you in terms of some things that you can do. As a parent, avoid absolutes. It's not black, it's not white. Let's kind of keep things in the gray area. When you ask questions, ask open-ended questions. How was your day is probably not an open-ended question because you know what the answer is going to be. Fine. What did you do in your math class today? Or tell me about what did you have for lunch? I mean, try to make your questions a little bit more interesting and a little bit more open so you can engage in more conversation with your child. And then when you really want to have good conversations with your kids, do it when there's no escape. So it can be in the car. You know how great car conversations are? They're wonderful. You don't have to look at each other when you're talking. And it can be a very free and releasing conversation. So look for those opportunities to have those kinds of conversations with your kids.
Same thing, my favorite question not to ask is, do you have any homework? What homework did you have today? Let me see your assignment notebook is good. So I'm going to just kind of wrap it up quickly, even though there's so much to talk about. Preparing for post-high school, which is what Pat and I have the luxury instead of doing now, which we're very lucky because we just weren't ready to stop. So the academic part, a lot of what we do and what we talk about in other kinds of settings is to balance. Even though a child may be placed into let's say an honors class in every single area separately, if you put those all together and they try and do that along with extracurricular activities and all the other responsibilities that they have, they're going to burn out. We've seen it. We've worked with thousands of kids over the years. And so balance is very important. Again, the high school counselors will help you with that. The teachers will help you with that. The counselor's the only one that has the really big picture, though, because the teachers have the individual picture. So balance throughout the 4 years is very important. A student at the beginning, I've had parents tell me, they tell the kid, well, I told them they're never going to get into college. No, they can. I will never lie to them. That's not true. And many of them, we were just talking before this, it's hard for kids today. I have two kids who graduated and just found their first jobs, but it took many years. So it's not always a straight line. It's the crooked line these days. So the best thing they could do right now is enjoy their high school time, do the best that they can, make sure they don't overdo it, because that can come back to bite them too. Because if they are in all honors classes and they're not getting the best grades they can, that's not going to work either, because they're going to do more detriment. What happens each year basically is you're going to register as 8th graders. Actually by next February is registration month. January? What?
They did.
For next year. I'm sorry, you already did that. Then after that, every year, registration's in February. I always tell the kids registration, February is called Change Your Mind Month, because that's when everything's open to you. But after that, it starts to close, and just like everything else, things are getting tighter. So they do have to make very careful decisions. The counselors will do plans with students. Pat and I still do that with some students, but they always change. In all my years, I had one student who didn't change the 4-year plan. It was just weird. I said, I can't believe you never changed this thing. It was weird, because that's not typical. But every year, they should do the best they can in their classes. It's very usual for them to try several activities. In the end, the colleges and universities, employers, military, whatever it is, they're looking for kids to develop a passion, or several passions, both inside the classroom and outside the classroom. But that doesn't mean, like when I was growing up, every activity. And they're looking for people to show commitment and longevity, so they're not going to do that freshman and sophomore year. They'll begin to hone in depending on their situation and who they meet, junior year, senior year. And I always tell the kids, leadership doesn't have to be that you're voted president or you're the captain. we just saw something yesterday which was really cool, where a leader is the first follower. It was a great video, and I never thought of it this way, because the first follower gets everybody else to come in and make it seem like it's okay. If you just have one leader by themselves, if you have no one to lead. So the first follower is actually more important. So that's leadership. Leadership is selling cookies in the hallway during charity drives. So they don't have to do, some parents say, well, they have to do a sport, and they have to do an activity, and they have to do community service. The nice thing about the Highland Park and Deerfield communities is it's ingrained. And you've all ingrained that in them, and there's opportunities to do that where they don't have to do it specifically. So there's a lot of help inside the school, there's a lot of help outside the school. It's very important though that you're a partner, that there's something going on at home too to support. As I'm back now, I'm getting a lot of calls, more than I really expected, from a lot of parents, and I'll ask them, what can you do in the school? And, well, we can do this and this. What's going on at home? What are you doing at home? It's okay for you to ask for that assignment notebook, but do know in the meltdown periods, because we all had them, and I went through them with my kids. When they come home and they present to you, they hold it together sometimes during school, and then they come home where it's safe and they unload. And then we react as parents. I've done that too. Be careful. They experienced it the way they experienced it, and it's very real to them. But it's really important to call the teacher if that's the situation, whatever, and get the other part of it, because there will be another part of it. So don't react. The other thing we have to say is about emailing is don't react is the nice thing about email is that you can send it at any time. The bad thing is it's stamped with the time. So if we get it, we will see that you sent it at 4:23 in the morning. And when it's this long and it's capitals, which by the way to me, Michelle was laughing at me, capitals are yelling. So I just got one this week, every other word was capitalized. It's yelling. Why would you want to yell at someone you want to help your child? Okay, so you're just partner with us. And then there's people outside. If the school does a great job, they have limitations. There are tutors. We do college consulting. There are therapists, which is my segue into letting them talk. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Pat and Sandy, I really appreciate you painting a picture of both the increased freedom and responsibilities that our kids will face, the incremental opportunities that they will have in high school, the great range of resources that are available, and some of the sort of tips and recommendations along the way. So thank you. So we'll shift gears a little bit from the external environment that our teens will be facing to the internal environment in their minds and hearts that Jody and Marcy will walk us through.
Yes, all right. So before I start, I just want to say that most adolescents go through the period of adolescence normally. There's a wide range of normal, like Pat said, but most do not go through with any kind of big turmoil or turbulence. Some do, and that's why you're there, that's why we're here. But there's a lot of children, mostly, like I think it's like 90% we said or something, that actually go through without a whole lot of turbulence. So this is a time to enjoy your child. It's a time to enjoy your child becoming an adult and becoming their own person separate from you. Because that's what they want to do. And they will, whether you like it or not. But it's good. You can enjoy it. You can learn who they are or relearn who they are. You probably all saw it when they were babies and little. And then somehow, we sometimes forget, I think, as parents, that they are their own people with their own personalities, their own goals, their own dreams. And it's important to enjoy that and figure out what that is for your child. So what I wanted to do first was to go through this kind of sheet is a good framework for the changes that take place during adolescence, during this time period. And usually people break this up into the biological changes, the psychological changes, and the social changes. So I'm going to cover the biological and the psychological very briefly. Marcy's going to cover the social a little bit, and also kind of put in today's world how those things are sort of affected by social media, by other things that our kids are exposed to that maybe we weren't exposed to when we were that age. We also talk about adolescence in terms of early, middle, and late adolescence. Again, these ages are approximate. It's kind of a fluid thing, and it's not all the same. So if your child is exhibiting things in middle adolescence already, don't freak out. okay? Every child does this at their own pace and differently. The main goal is that by the end, we want them to be somewhat independent functioning human beings, right? And as they go through adolescence, you as parents need to offer support and guidance, but less and less as they go through. And the school already has that built into their curriculum, into their counseling, into everything. So they do their part. We have to do our part as parents to kind of support that and guide them through that as well. All right, so biologically speaking, there's a lot that happens, and that has already started happening with a lot of these children because it's happening younger and younger these days. There's physical development and there's sexual development. Physically, kids are growing in height, they're gaining weight, they're getting ready to kind of sprout. That doesn't mean that they all do it at the same pace. In fact, they all do it at different paces, even kids in the same family. So my 8th grader is, and everybody who knows him, is eons taller and bigger than my 9th grader. So even in the same family, even with the same genetics, kids grow and develop at different rates. Why is this important? One, you need to support whatever it is that your child's doing. Not get on them if they're gaining weight. It will go up. We call it growth potential in our house. Oh, you have a lot of growth potential going on. My kids tease me that I have growth potential and I'm done growing, but reframe it in a way that's good. It's good you're gaining weight because you're going to need that to grow taller and to be stronger. If kids start dieting too early, they will not reach their maximum growth. If they are too aware of their growth potential, they might develop an eating disorder. I was telling Marcia, I had a patient who developed, she was a twin, she developed earlier than her twin and earlier than most of the girls in her grade, in her cohort. The boys made a little bit of fun of her because she was getting some boobs, she felt very uncomfortable because of her relationship to her sister and how her sister wasn't developing yet. The parents trying to be very, very supportive and trying to listen to what her needs and her concerns were. We're like, well, then go on a diet, We all cringe, but these parents are good parents. They were doing it. They were being, in their mind, very supportive of her. She has developed an eating disorder that lasted for the next 30 years. So you have to be very, very careful and aware. The kids already know where they stand compared to everybody else. They are looking at their bodies. They're looking at their friends' bodies. They're aware of it. They don't need you to point it out. They need you to be supportive. They need you to say, it's okay. Everybody goes through this differently. If your sister's not going through it right now, she will be soon. If your friends aren't going through it now, they will be soon. You can show them how to all do it the right way. Whatever it takes, you need to let them know it doesn't matter. You're shorter than everybody else. All the other boys have grown and you still haven't grown yet. You'll get there. And actually, if you start growing later, you'll grow longer. Right? Because people that start growing earlier will stop sooner. The kids that start later. So my 9th grader started after my 8th grader, but he will probably grow till he's 17 or 18, where my 8th grader will probably stop when he's 15 or 16. They all end up where they're going to end up. Nothing we do or say is going to change that unless we give, help to create an eating disorder. Okay, so that's physical kind of stuff. Sexual development. There's an increase in sex hormones for both boys and girls during this period. Boys increase in testosterone, and girls, their estrogen increases. They also get a little bit of androgens, which is like testosterone. So, but what does that mean? Big deal. Okay, so everybody's hormones are out of whack and it's crazy. But it does mean something, and it means something to your kids in their dating world. So I'm going to tell you what I think it means. You can agree with me or not agree, but this is what I've seen. Boys, the testosterone causes aggression and sexual urges. It's normal, it's fine, they just need to be channeled in the right direction. Girls, estrogen can cause more moodiness and mood instability, some depression. So you have boys who are biologically wanting to be more aggressive and sexual, and girls that are a little bit more moody, and you put them together. Right? They're not looking for the same thing when they are hooking up. Yeah.
Are you talking about, you just used the term hooking up?
I will explain that in 1 minute,
I
yes.
think you were talking about the 13 and up as opposed to the 11.
Yeah, that's why I want you guys to refer to this while you're,
Right, but
yeah.
it says 11 through 13 for middle adolescents. What are you talking about?
Yeah, well, it depends. But, what are you saying?
Middle.
The middle adolescence is when they start hooking up, middle to late adolescence, mostly. I'm not gonna say that there aren't kids in the early adolescence that aren't. The freshmen and sophomores are very into hooking up and exploring things. What does that mean? Okay, so hooking up means a whole bunch of different things to different kids. There is not the same sense of when we were younger because of social media, and I'll talk about that in a second, but kids don't ask each other out on dates for the most part. Some do, but mostly they go to parties, they have an experience with someone, they hook up with them, they have some kind of physical interaction with them. There's not a whole lot of talking, not a whole lot of getting to know the other person. This is the new norm, yeah. And I don't know even what to say about that. I have my own views about that. Some of it, there's a lot of exposure to porn. I'm just going to put it out there. Boys in middle school even, and early high school, they're watching a lot of porn. A lot of what they're learning is from that. So it's very important for the males, their fathers, or males, uncles, whoever in these children's lives, to the boys to explain to them, that's not normal, that's not how you treat a woman, that's not how, because some of these boys think that that's what you do, because that's what they're seeing. And because they have access on their phones and on the internet and whatever, they are seeing a lot of stuff that's out there that's probably not what they should be seeing. What were you going to say about hooking up? Were you going to say something?
Yeah, so I don't know if any of you, years ago, I think it was 2005, Katie Couric did a special on the new norm for sex. Did anyone see that? Well, basically the bottom line was, when I was young, for instance, when I was a teenager, we had kind of an order in terms of, she referred to the 4 bases, you remember that, and going in order and exploring. Well, that was out even in 2005. So in 2005, there was no order. And what we thought was, major is very minor for kids now. And I think the issue for teens now is there's not an order. So if you hook up enough times, you might start dating. Sounds really backwards to me, but that's what they're doing, and in college also. So this continues. We'll get to this, but the older adolescents, you can have much different conversations with about this, and obviously their judgment and reasoning is at a different level. But you will see with the girls who are moodier, just normally, or they may look at it as, if I hook up, maybe this boy will like me. And the boys kind of stop, because they're all doing this. Some boys are hurt also, but some boys don't know what to do afterwards. So they may ignore the girl completely, or vice versa. Sometimes it's the girl that ignores the boy, because they're not mature yet, and their judgment's not formed yet. So hooking up can mean a lot of different things.
And there's a lot of experimentation going on too. The kids are experimenting a lot more with sex and what it means than we did in our generation. So just to know that stuff's out there.
Just had a quick question. When you describe this is the normal majority kids doing that?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is like everyone, but if your child comes home and or you hear them talking that they hooked up, it could mean anything from making out, what we used to call making out, to having sex. So they use this term, and you have to explore through the open conversation.
Right, and that's what we're going to get to too. Like, communication is really, really, really important. So it's not like you just send your kids out and say, well, have a good time. You say, when they come out, what'd you do? Who were you with? What'd you do? Oh, you hooked up? What do you mean by hooking up? We didn't have that term when we were younger, so what does that mean to you? You need to talk to your child and understand what it means to them. It doesn't mean that they're always going to tell you, but it's important to at least have that discussion. I will not even ask you what my 17-year-old asked me in the car today. The car is a really good place. But I wanted to get out of the car today, not him.
parents are, they really do listen.
They do.
If you ignore
Absolutely.
the topic, that's when there's trouble. They want to know what you're thinking, they want to know what the parameters are, and they want to know what your expectations are, and that will help your child decide for themselves what's right and what's not right.
In a loving, caring, non-judgmental way.
Right, right. When I will tell you, I won't tell you what my son asked me, but when he asked me today, and I was like, oh, and he prefaced it with, this is gonna sound really weird as a son asking a mom this question, but I'm just curious. You know, I knew it was coming, but whatever. You had, like, very non-judgmentally, I tried to answer, I will tell you what, I don't want to scare you. I answered, he's older. I answered his question, and it was nice. I mean, and then we moved on to some other, like, topic of conversation, but you have to take those couple deep breaths and be like, okay, he's not talking about himself necessarily, I'm not gonna panic, I'm just gonna answer this. He brought it up, he felt comfortable enough, I should be glad about that. You know, you have to say all this stuff sort of in your head to sort of calm yourself down and then respond. One of the things I'm going to talk about later is the parenting piece of this. And if you listen and don't try and solve, we're all solvers. We all live in a community where, you know, you see a problem, you fix it, you get your kid whatever they need, blah, 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 blah. That's not always okay with adolescents. They need to know that you're just listening to them and you're just hearing them and that you trust them to fix it.
What happens if you don't?
If you don't fix it,
No. What happens?
if you don't trust them.
No, if you trust them, but you also know that they're not capable of.
Then you
making-
can step in. Then you can step in. But I think you give them the opportunity first and you say to them, or you guide them, what do you think you should do about this? Or what do you think we should do about this? Let them try and problem solve it with you, because if you always go in and rescue them from it, they are not gonna learn themselves how to problem solve it. And you don't want them going off at 17 or 18 years old and not having the skills to do it. Because yes, they can escape from college and they can text you every day, but that's not where they should be developmentally.
And we see a lot of kids coming home.
Who's not learned to do
mastered
that.
Yeah.
So it's scary. It's not always pleasant, but it's where they need to be. Okay. Under biological stuff too, I just wanted to touch on sleep briefly, because sleep seems to be a big issue with adolescents, especially nowadays. And I have a couple theories about that, which I will share with you. But in general, even before this day and age, adolescents wanted to go to sleep later, right, and stay asleep longer. And their schedules aren't always so that they can do that. They have 6 a.m. practices, or they have to be at school at 8. So you have to sort of help them again to manage that. I know you want to stay up later, but if you stay up till 3 or 4 in the morning, you're not getting up for that 6 a.m. practice, or you're not going to be in good physical shape to do that, or to go to class at 8, and you're going to sort of get yourself behind. So you need to still monitor sleep in a way that they're getting enough sleep. That's somewhere where I think you can step in if you see that they're sort of out of the range of normal, or they're not being healthy about it, as part of just their, teaching them how to be healthy. So here are my issues about sleep too. Caffeine. For some reason, our kids think it's okay to go to Starbucks and go to Erva Dolce and get caffeinated drinks 3-4 times a day. Before school, during school, I'm scaring her. After school. So I know, I'm not trying to scare you, I'm really not, I'm just trying to let you know what's out there so you can be aware. All right, so here's the thing, I don't care if they go to Starbucks or Erva Dolce, my kids go too, but tell them, get something non-caffeinated. You don't need to be drinking caffeine at your age. Again, with their growth, that's not gonna help their growth any. They don't need, and then they say, I can't fall asleep at night. Well, duh. If I had a big, iced coffee at 3-4 in the afternoon, I wouldn't be able to sleep either. But they don't know this, right? They know that everybody else goes and is carrying around these big drinks, so they should be doing that too. So I think you need to be aware of their caffeine intake. And then here's my favorite new one, Netflix. Okay? I will admit, I have some shows on Netflix that I'm sort of addicted to that I like to watch too. But, I'm going to share this with her. Okay, so I had time the other day. I could have either watched my show on Netflix or I could have written this presentation. So what did I say to myself? You can't watch your show until you write your presentation, right? Our kids don't have all that self-control sometimes. They will watch, I have patients come in and tell me that they have watched entire seasons in one setting. Do you know what that is? That's like 15 to 20, 45-minute episodes in one sitting. What is that, like 12 hours, 13 hours, something like that? In one sitting. Clearly you could have done your bio lab report or your English paper that you're not telling me, like, I had no time to do my English paper. Well, how many episodes of 24 did you watch, right? So I have no problem with Netflix, obviously. I think it's good for them to have their shows. I think it's good for them to identify with some of the characters in the shows and all of that. But they have to use it wisely, and that's where you come in. You can say, what happened in 24 in the last episode you watched? You know, like, take an interest in their shows. I could care less about some of the shows my kids watch, but I listen to what they say is happening in their shows because it shows that I'm, interested in their show. And then I say, right, is your homework done? Or did you watch that before or after you did your homework? Or maybe you don't watch any more of those episodes tonight because you need to get your bio lab report done or something like that. You need to just be aware that, and the kids are addicted to it. It's so easy. They can watch it on their phone. They can watch it on any screen, on their computer. So they're upstairs doing their homework and their reports, their bio lab, I don't know why I keep coming back to bio, but whatever, that's what we were doing today, but they're, whatever is getting their English papers a little too hard, they can't think of an opening sentence, I'll just watch one show. Then all of a sudden it's episodes and episodes later and they still don't have that opening line to their English paper. So again, say to them, I don't care if you watch Netflix, I love it. I love that you're watching this show. But learn to manage it and teach them how to manage it so that, again, when they get to college, they're not in their dorm room watching Netflix all the time and not going to class. Because I've had some of those kids have to come home too. All right, Netflix and caffeine. Doesn't help. Oh, screens. Okay, so that the other thing with sleep. Thank you. The other thing with sleep is the Netflix and even just their phones. The screens will activate your occipital lobe. They kind of turn your brain on. So if your kids are on their screens up until the time they're trying to go to sleep, and then they try and go to sleep right away, but they're not going to be able to. Their brains are too activated. They need to get off their screens an hour or so before they want to go to bed. So just educate your child to this. Do your homework that you need your screen for before bedtime. If it's around bedtime, do some reading and annotating, but do not be on your screen. All right. How much more time do I have? Not much.
You guys have about 5
So,
Together.
all right. Really quickly, I'm just going to say, psychologically, I'm
Well, sorry,
sorry.
it's okay, I'm teasing.
Psychologically, what is going on with your kids? They're increasing their cognitive development, okay? Increased abilities for abstract thinking, moral reasoning, questions about what life means to them. And this is where sort of depression can come in too. But it is normal for kids to question at this point, what is life all about? What am I here for? Those kind of things. And to think more abstractly, so that you will hear more of that kind of talk. And again, it's so much fun, it's so interesting to engage them in that kind of, talk and discussion. Right.
So, I'm going to shorten this example a lot, but this is where I think the moral reasoning and really it pulls together more in later adolescence, so middle adolescence is really the area that we've been focusing on. If you look at the sheet, though, you could see all the nice things as a development with later adolescence. If your child is talking about wanting to die, suicide, if they're having obsessive thoughts of death, that is different than morally considering the reason for, like, why are we here? Looking at family values. A lot of times teens will start questioning cultural beliefs and religious beliefs, and that's normal. And that's what we wanted to get from this. This is all normal. But if they're questioning them to the point where it's causing them to feel, depressed, they can't get out of bed, why am I alive, is a very different type of question. So that's one thing that we wanted to point out, because you'll see that throughout high school, the later end, even more. But again, it all depends on your child. So I think I only have a few minutes to go over social emotional growth. They're in these middle years. which I don't think I can do. So maybe with a show of hands, do you want to hear a little bit more about differentiating depression from normal development? I can go through what you want to see just broadly in terms of normal development and then move to that differentiation. And then when you have questions, maybe we'll cover some of that. Or if you gave emails, I'm happy to send you my outline. But normal development is very important to consider because of a lot of what Jody talked about with hormonal changes and both cognitive growth and biological growth. But from a social emotional perspective, really what they're trying to develop by the end of adolescence, so that end of late adolescence, is to their own identity, their own autonomy. You want them to be an individual. So they're going to be reliant more on their peer group for their values than yours. I mean, but they've heard you and they're still learning from you. But it's normal that they're going to tell you you don't know what you're talking about. And their friends, who's always everyone, which could be one person, is telling them something else. If you really ask for names, which I do during therapy sessions, I'll ask, and a lot of kids really can only come up with maybe, if I'm lucky, one name. So you may need to push on that, but you want them to become independent. I think keep in mind during those middle adolescent years, you've all been dealing with early adolescence. So you've been dealing with those issues. During middle adolescence, they are kind of, their expectations, yes, I think they go up, but then their insecurities come out more because they are comparing themselves and their self-concepts are not fully formed. So you see a lot of insecurity, which is why I think we start to see more of the anxiety, more of the depression. It may have been underlying, or it may not come out until there's an environmental trigger. And you see both. Biological, like biologically based depression can also be triggered by something that's happening in their environment, either socially at home, or vice versa. I mean, but so keep in mind what's going on and that they're not feeling totally secure. I forgot who said about developing a passion, but both high schools have amazing, both academic, extracurricular programs, everything from the arts to an academic club. What you want to do is help your child explore those and find what they're good at, because that's how they're going to develop part of their self-concept. The social group is the other area, and I have a lot to say about this area, so I would just, I think that groups change, and you want to help your child as they move through different groups. By the middle to end of sophomore year is when I personally see them start to solidify a little more. But there are some students who go through and don't have a group. So they have friends in multiple groups, but then on Friday nights, who are they going to hang out with? Those friends are hanging out in groups. So those children, you need to think about, it's a great skill as an adult. You know, we have friends in multiple groups, but it's hard as a teenager. So you want family is a place to develop self-concept, academics, all the extracurriculars. You want to expose your child to as much as you can that you think they will be good at and enjoy. Not over, balance is crucial. I'm going to look to see what I want to cover. I think we should. Do I have enough time that I quickly go over alcohol and drugs and then differentiating? I mean, I think normal development, you can read about it, and honestly, I'm happy to send you my outline. There's a lot that goes on, and just remember, they're pulling away from you, and they're valuing the input of their friends, and keep in mind all the hormonal changes, because I think that affects everything, sexual encounters and drugs and alcohol. Drugs and alcohol, they want to fit in. I don't know if I said that phrase yet, but so they want to fit in. So if they're going to parties, they don't have good judgment yet, and they're not just going to, parents will say, just carry around the drink and pretend. They want to fit in, so if kids are drinking to get drunk, they will do that. The kids I see who really don't want to drink, it's hard sometimes. What will they do socially? So you need to really have open conversations with them. The same with marijuana, but I feel like alcohol is what kids are exposed to first and then marijuana. But freshman year, it depends on the community. But I think by junior, senior year, they start a little bit more to feel comfortable doing what they feel is best, and they can still be with their friends.
It
What
doesn't mean though that you say to your
Agreed,
kid,
yeah.
it's okay to drink or do drugs or do them with us because it's better to do them in your own house than do them other places. That is not sending a good message, just to be clear.
No, you have to, and we skipped a lot, but you have to be the role model, you have to have discussions, but really, they still need you to have the structure. And, in terms of problem solving and showing empathy and helping them use judgment, they're still going to be 14, 15. I think that by senior year, you want them solving more problems. But at the beginning, you can give input without judging them or helping them see the other side of a situation so that they can truly solve it. One of my concerns with marijuana and depression, and this could be alcohol, but I think that lack of motivation, I'm not talking about someone experimenting. Experimentation, risk-taking is part of adolescence, even though they're not saying, oh, go ahead and do this. But if someone becomes more dependent on marijuana, it's hard to know if they're not getting out of bed because of the lack of motivation, because of marijuana use versus depression or social anxiety, or they may start using because of depression or social anxiety, and then the use covers that. You have to address all of the areas for that individual to get better. And because it's so accepted sometimes, then I think sometimes it's not addressed quickly enough. It might take a number of failures in college for the individual or parents to address that, but I am seeing more and more of that
I'm seeing a lot
happening.
more marijuana use too, and the marijuana that's out there now, I don't know if it's because it's legalized in other places or whatever, is way, way, way stronger. I don't know if you guys saw that Time Magazine article, but there's synthetic pot and there's all this stuff out there that's really a lot stronger, laced with other stuff. So the kids need to know that and be aware of that. They don't know what and they're not smoking if they're inhaling it in vaporizers.
Oh, yeah.
Because they think that,
Apples
this is my favorite adolescent logic. If I don't smoke it and I inhale it through a vaporizer, then I'm not exposing myself to the risk of lung cancer, so I'm being a responsible user. I can't tell you how many times in the last 3 months I've heard that.
I have a question here. Okay. I mean, I'm not naive. I did awful things when I was a teenager and all that. But like you're saying, they do completely different things now than we did. How do we find out about what they're doing, like what's out there and all that kind of stuff? Like,
And there's a lot
there's
out
only so
there.
much you can
And I don't want to scare everyone. I
We
think
scared Kathleen.
Yeah, we scare. So
no, and I'm not. And again, it's like, I mean, I just was watching something like they're snorting Smarties.
Yeah,
They're like
that's
doing
all.
well,
all
there's
this, like,
jelly, like
Yeah,
There's
there's
gummy bears
find
that
out
have
that
this-
stuff.
Right. I mean, there's a lot out there.
You need to keep your ears open, and you need to just listen. And you will hear it if you just keep your ears open. And you need to ask your kids. I know that there's different stuff out there. What do you hear?
Here's
You know,
the-
don't be afraid to bring it up and talk to them about it.
I wanted, because this segues into something that starting freshman year, they're gonna be invited to parties.
Yeah.
You said that. And I know I struggle with my kids too, and their friend groups change, so all of a sudden you don't know the parents anymore, where you always knew them growing up, and it's uncomfortable, and there's that push-pull with your kids about, well, mom, don't, that would be embarrassing,
Yeah.
kind of thing. So I remember checking with one of my kids, and I probably didn't do it enough, and said, you're going to so-and-so's house for a party, fine, I need to talk to the parent. And they're like, no, you can't do that. And I'm like, okay, here's your choice. I can talk to them on the phone, or I can show up with cookies to bring to the door. And then, I won't embarrass you, I'll say, here, I'm offering this to check. And then, another time, and the other thing is, basically, and I did ask a couple of the counselors at school today, I'm going to this thing, what's one thing you want me to make sure I tell everyone? And they're like, A, the parties start early, and B, if the student feels that in their gut, there's something's not right or it's wrong, then it is. And that they should have a pass to call you. I got a call like that once, meet me on the corner, no questions asked, as long as it doesn't keep happening over and over again, you know, and they use that.
And don't worry, my son is gonna kill me for keeping using him as an example, but he's a senior now. He hardly went out freshman, sophomore, junior year. He did it because he knew if he went to parties, there would be a lot of drugs and alcohol, and he wasn't comfortable with himself being able to be in that situation and knowing how to say no or what to do. So he just took himself out of that situation. And it was hard because there were times on Friday nights where I'd say, well, don't you want to go out with friends? But he goes, Mom, why would you want me to go to a party where everybody's getting drunk and getting high? I don't want to be there. Why would you push me? Like, I'm not a social idiot. I have friends in school. I can talk to people. I don't want to be at these things. And then I shut up. But you get worried, like, oh my God, is my son not social enough? Is my kid not going out? If they're not going out, they're not going out for a reason.
Marcy, do you want to wrap up your?
No, I want to say, first of all, if you look at the Rebecca's Dream website, some of what I was going to go over is symptoms of depression for teenagers. I'd just like to highlight, depression looks different for teens. It could be sadness, irritability, agitation. Even when you're talking about bipolar disorder in adults, you see more sadness and mania. With teens, you might see sadness, agitation,
And you might see them all in one day.
yeah, rapid cycling. So it's not, so it's hard. So the girls, we're talking about all the hormonal changes for the boys and girls. And then if you're worried about depression or anxiety, there are a lot of overlapping symptoms with depression, anxiety. If your child's having a hard time concentrating, is that inattention? Is it depression? Is it anxiety? Is the curriculum too difficult for them? I mean, so without jumping to conclusions, I think you need to explore it. And one of the things I wanted to say, because there's so much overlap at this age with hormone changes and symptoms, is look at the frequency. So think about how long have these symptoms been present. Think about how severe they are. And think about, like, how different is my child acting? You know, even considering adolescence. And then you need to try to talk to your child without labeling it. Or reach out to a guidance counselor. Reach out to another parent who maybe has a child with depression. Your pediatrician, it could be a private therapist, psychiatrist, it could be a rabbi, a minister, you know, whoever you're comfortable with. I would say reach out. Yeah, but don't be afraid. This was a part I was going to talk about in terms of talking to your child. Don't be afraid to talk to them. They will either pretend everything's okay, and I'd say keep going back, but be open and try to find someone else to step in, or they'll be relieved. But either way, when you're saying it, even if they're acting as if they want you out of that room, more than, like the daggers are going through, keep talking to them, not all at once. But if you are worried, don't drop it, because I feel like you know them the best. And even with all the changes, you're their parents, you know. So if you feel something's wrong, and kids, teenagers, adults are really good at hiding it. So that's, sorry I jumped around a lot, but.
Thank you, Jody. and
No, it's
Marcy.
okay.
No, it's fantastic. Thank you for giving us a glimpse at the internal changes from physical and emotional that are going on at the same time as they're facing this exciting new environment in high school. So we're going to use our last 10 minutes for questions and answers and dialogue about this. So we'll cover as many as we can. Our speakers have generously agreed to stay for a few minutes afterwards, but if you could cover a few of your most pressing questions now, please.
Is it ever appropriate, or, you know, when you start to bring up social media and everything, you know, to check your child's, you know, phone? Like, you know, if you know, when is it, you know, you're invading my privacy, or, you know, looking at their computer, or anything?
I mean, I have no problem with you checking it. I encourage people to check and to
Should
know
they
it.
know though? Because we've had the discussion, like, I don't want to do it behind your back. but
Yeah,
sometimes
absolutely. I
I'm
think
sure
your kids,
you're
right. I think your kids
safe,
should know
you
when
know.
they get a phone, I have the right to check your text anytime I want to. They can delete them before you get them.
Yes.
Great question. Another one? Another comment or question?
Kind of maybe to piggyback on that, just with technology in general, we have limits at the kind of the middle adolescent stage. You know, I feel like I'm constantly battling with, it's too much. And I think the lines are so blurred because so much of the work that comes home is on the computer. So it's not unlikely for them to be working on Edmodo or wherever they're working, and then they're gonna, one click over, it's a text to respond. So it's so hard to navigate that. Any thoughts on just what's a fair limit? What should we be pushing back on realistically in all the technology?
If I could add on to your question, I've had that same battle, and I asked myself the question, are my son's grades okay? Is he well rested and healthy, and is he having time for appropriate social relationships? And if all those things are okay, I don't care about screen time, but I don't know if that's crazy or not. I would love to hear.
No, I think it depends what they're doing with their screen time too.
Yeah.
Some kids find it a lot more comfortable to be social that way, or, I had a girl once that I saw who was very, socially uncomfortable, but yet she could go on and talk about, pro-Israeli sites or whatever, and had a lot to say, and felt like she connected with people. Do you know what I mean? Like that way, and that was her social outlet. And for her,
It would help me define her
and
herself.
to figure out who she was, and to know that other people out there thought the same as she did, because she wasn't finding those kind of people at her school. So I think you have to just be aware of what they're doing.
I think we're also seeing more game addiction,
Mm-hmm.
that, probably more boys than girls, I'm gonna make that assumption, because all of the kids that I've talked to with game addictions are boys.
Netflix gaming.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a few, but I would say, have a conversation with your child about how many hours a day is it reasonable for you to be playing your games, and have that discussion and set those limits. And then, as a parent, how do I help you monitor those hours so that you don't go overboard and it doesn't become all-consuming?
Or a lot of times too, the other thing is if they're doing homework and they're constantly interrupted because their phone's next to them and it's going off, people are texting, that's something like, okay, if they're doing homework not in their room and in a common area, if it's semi-quiet, that's probably good because you can monitor it more and just make sure they're not multitasking in social ways while they're trying to do homework, if you can.
Yeah, I think it's very reasonable at a cutoff time, whatever that's appropriate, like, I just don't wanna tell people how to parent, but like 10 o'clock, whatever, 11 o'clock, whatever, 9 o'clock for some people, however much sleep your kid needs, I think it's very appropriate to go in and say all electronics have to be plugged in and out of your room. I don't think kids should have their phones in the room, and they'll say, I use it for my alarm. Well, you know what? We could buy you an alarm clock.
Set usage controls via the computer on your child's phone for data, phone calls, texting, etc. Just telling you, because I got the big bill before, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. Go on, I don't know what your provider is, Verizon, you pay $5 a month.
Right,
And you can literally say there are no phone calls coming incoming or outgoing from this phone past 9:30. You can put your phone number, grandma's phone number, dad's phone number, sister's phone number. They can get those phone calls, but nobody else's.
But that's okay when the kids are younger. As the kids get to be older, I really think they need to figure, they need to figure that out themselves.
You can do that if you really
Right.
have to.
But I think that's okay for the really young kids that have phones. These get phones till they're in high school, so whatever. But I think for the really young kids, that's okay. For the older kids, for the middle adolescents to late adolescent kids, you want them to be able to monitor themselves. So you say, you know what, it's not, when they're younger, it's not good to sleep with your phone in your bed. Now, my high school senior, for freshman and sophomore and junior year, he came home, he plugged his phone in downstairs, wasn't really allowed to use it till all his homework was done and whatever. We sort of eased up on that at the end of junior year and senior year now. And he has his phone in his room, but he's not on it at night because he wasn't used to it. He didn't build up that habit when he was younger and didn't have that self-control of being on his phone all the time.
I think teens now are worried about what they're going to miss.
Yes.
They're friends
There's
all
a-
day and then there's,
But I mean, even before teens.
What? Preteens, yeah.
Right, because I have two 11-year-olds and, can I just say something really fast, Marla, to your point about trucking? Because I know I'm not like to share stories, because if you have any reservations about checking your children's texts, if you think it's snooping, and I'm all for snooping, but, so I have twin girls, and the other day we were sitting in the kitchen, and one of my girls got a text from a boy, and he asked her out, and she said no, and he texted her right back, and he said, that's okay, I don't like you anyway. It was, it's like what we call truth or dare, but what's it called? Does anyone know? Whatever. It's a game. So it was a dare. So whatever. I happened to have been right there, so I heard. So we were able to talk about it. And of course, I was like, oh my God, what an ass. I mean, that was like so rude, right? But I didn't say that to her. But her sister, whatever. They joked about it, and it was kind of done. But I have to tell you, she brought it up this morning again. Now, had I not been there, and I wouldn't have been privy to that conversation, but had I checked her texts, I would have been able to see that happened. And I probably would have brought it up with her, because that could be really hurtful. Especially since her sister has been, asked out a couple times. So it could be a kind of funky situation. So I know I'm not a professional, but that's just been my experience, which is why I believe you should snoop. Now, granted, they're 11. I don't always want to know what my son, who's almost 14, is doing. So I'll take his phone in front of him, and once I found out that he did a really shitty thing to one of his friends, and he had just deleted it because he knew he was going to get in trouble. And he got caught.
Right, but see, that speaks to him trying to figure out his own moral development too. He knew on some level that that was a bad thing to do.
Well, and he also knew that if he didn't apologize,
that
he
he
would go out that night. So.
But let's err on the side that he knew he was doing something horribly wrong. And I think that's important.
I'm actually curious, because I haven't asked anyone, what is allowed in the high school? Because, I just, from what I notice, and it's not just, my daughters and I see it in magazines. People are walking, the phone is an appendage now, and it's no one, a group of 6 people are sitting and no one's talking to each other in a car. And what's allowed in high school? Because, I'm seeing Instagram during the day at middle school, I'm like, I thought you weren't supposed to be allowed to do this.
It's gotten difficult. When we first started years ago, if someone kid had a pager, they were a dealer. Okay, and then when the phones came, that was it. And then when the phones came out, it's like they were up to no good if they had a phone. And it's become difficult.
There are areas of the school where students are allowed to use their phone, whether they're talking on the phone. Nobody talks on the phone anymore. They're usually texting or doing whatever they're doing.
The common areas, not the academic areas.
Right.
But they know how to text in their
Cafeteria,
pocket.
right.
Right, and
That's
well,
supposed
there
to be
are
in
some
class.
problems with it though, and they're struggling with that because every kid's got a phone now. It's not like just certain kids. And they're not allowed to have them in class, and if they pull them out, it's very tricky for teachers. Why are they pulling out? Are they trying to write down an assignment, or are they cheating on a test? Or the
And yet
bathrooms are not.
I've
Right, I was gonna say, I've had a patient text me from the bathroom, I'm having a panic attack, what do I do? And I'm like, where are you? In the bathroom at school. Okay, walk down to your counselor's office, but they text
And they will
whatever
text
from
you
anywhere.
from places.
They're not supposed to have their phones on in the bathroom. But I found, they don't want anyone taking pictures.
But they do, they have them all over. I'm telling you, if you could see the tweets that went on during the
Yeah, I'm
presentation
sure.
today.
I saw them.
I think they are.
There's a flip side though of the phone. So for example, some of the students that I've worked with, we've made arrangements with them to, you know how sometimes teachers write assignments on the board? To take a picture of the assignment. So that they've got a record if they're kids that are unorganized or they don't write something down or they run out of time at the end of the period. So you have to teach them when it is appropriate and when it's not appropriate.
That's part of
I
the
think
developmental
that's
piece
right.
too.
I think that's a really good point. If you're gonna give your kids a phone or access to technology, you just do it in a wise way. You do it mindfully. Like,
And I know my daughter is in high school, and in their chemistry class, they have a Facebook group, and one child in the class every day takes a note or takes a picture of the board. They post it on Facebook, and so that night for homework, they're on Facebook, but they're on their chemistry page. So
It
there
can
are
be a tool.
there's very
It's a tool. It's a good
It
tool.
can be a tool.
Right.
Right, thank you for that.
I want to be respectful of your time. As I mentioned, our speakers have agreed to stay around for a few minutes for your individual questions, but join me in thanking Pat, Sandy, Jody, and Marcy for I want to reiterate our thanks to Rebecca's Dream for their generous support of this program. I want to thank Michelle Holland and Pat Nicholas for their consultative role with Rebecca's Dream and helping organize today's program. Thank you.